Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, the topic for today's discussion is acute flaccid paralysis, which is now a new term coined for describing cases of poliomyelitis and those cases which closely resemble polio but are not definitely proven cases. I am Professor Akmal Laik from the Pediatric Department at Akhtar Saeed Medical College. Well, as usual, as a standard protocol, we make you aware that there are certain objectives to be achieved by this academic activity. The first being that I want all the listeners and my students to be able to diagnose patients of acute flaccid paralysis and poliomyelitis. This diagnosis is based on the clinical symptomatology findings, but we must differentiate each case from other resembling cases. All cases who come to us weakness are not to be diagnosed as polio. We need certain parameters to be fulfilled before this label is assigned. My second objective is that polio should not be taken as an individual disease, but rather a disease of the communities. And we must understand that this disease can spread to the susceptible children and even adults in our community. So we should understand that. Third, what is the significance of acute flaccid paralysis in community health? Again, an important issue. And finally, since it is a community health problem, we need to implement certain preventive measures in AFP. We take them one by one. Of course, there is no doubt, you all are very aware that the significance medical handicap of getting an acute poliomyelitis infection is that it leads to permanent weakness of muscles called post-polio paralysis, which is a lifelong physical disability, and patients are handicapped regarding their locomotion. So, this is a very important significant illness. Look at the hope in the girl's eyes. Another case of poliomyelitis. The legs are paralyzed. She is sitting at the road, at the street, maybe a beggar, but she is totally dependent on others regarding her locomotion and regarding her future development. These are our everyday cases that we see in the home, hospital, and in the street. Young schoolgirl who is mentally very sharp and bright. She's got a normal upper limbs, but look at her lower limbs. Due to weakness of the muscles and paralysis, there is complete excessive extension at the knee joint and very difficult walking. Now, these abnormal positioning and deformities all follow the attack of muscle weakness called poliomyelitis. Let's trace the history of poliomyelitis. In 1840, it was first scientifically described in a literature by Jacob Heen, and in 1908, polio virus was isolated from the stool samples, and thus we can link that polio is caused by poliovirus. In 1916, close to First World War, an epidemic of polio spread in US. There were 6,000 reported cases, 6,000 deaths, and 27,000 cases were noted. In 1952, another worldwide epidemic was seen, especially affecting the United States and Europe, with 57,628 cases were recorded and many deaths. Well, scientists continued working on developing a vaccine, and finally, in 1952, a Salk vaccine, which was injectable, given intramuscularly, was invented. In 1957, Sabin vaccine, which was orally administered, was invented. So, these were the two very important landmarks in the control of poliomyelitis. The disease continued throughout the world unchecked, with very little people getting vaccination. Finally, WHO recognized its importance, and in 1988, they started a polio eradication campaign. In 2014, most of the parts of the world, most of the continents, they were free of polio, and the disease was only reported from Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Nigeria. All the rest of the world has become polio free. In 2019, only two countries, that is Pakistan and Afghanistan, are reporting cases of poliomyelitis. The whole of the Europe, America, Australia, Asia, Middle East is all polio free. And being a Pakistani, we should know that this is a very important fact for all of us. Coming to the basic facts of poliovirus, remember that poliovirus is an RNA virus, belongs to the family of enteroviruses. Only human beings are affected, no animals. Very different from others. And the usual route of transmission for almost all cases is fecal-oral. That is, the patient or the contact, they pass poliovirus in their stools, and through contaminated water supply, it ultimately reaches the next person who is the susceptible host, and then he comes in contact. So fecal-oral route is by far the most common route of spread. Very rarely it can spread through the respiratory secretion, but in very negligible number of cases. We all know that polio virus, which causes disease, is called wild virus, wild. And there can be three different types: wild polio 1, wild polio 2, wild polio 3. All of them are important. Of course, we have strains of polio which are avirulent, and they are used for whose immunity, whose virulence has been markedly suppressed by different virological methods, and ultimately those strains which are avirulent are used to produce immunity from various vaccines, oral vaccines. Now, how the disease spreads? The virus enters the body of a susceptible host or a new person, usually through oral route. Sometimes secretions matter, but majority is through the oral route. Sometimes infected water in the swimming pool is responsible. Now, the first barrier to the entry of the virus is the gut mucosa. If the gut mucosa has IgE antibody already present, they will block the entry and patient will not develop disease. So that is the rationale to give them oral vaccination. But if there are no antibodies in the mucosal lining, then the virus enters the gut, produces viremia, and then it settles down most likely in the CNS. Initially, it is generalized spread, but then the virus settles in the parts of central nervous system. It causes aseptic meningitis. That is, the patient's meninges are inflamed. They produce features of viral meningitis. Patient has symptoms of meningitis, but then is viral in etiology. The next thing comes that patient develops involvement of the anterior horn cells. These anterior horn cells are present in the spinal cord, femoral segment from cervical till the sacral, and then also involve the brain stem nuclei where the cranial nerves are affected. Now, it causes direct damage and death of the anterior horn cells, leading on to lower motor neuron paralysis. The patient passes virus in the stool for at least 2 to 3 months. Hence, the excretion in the stool is the main way the virus spreads to the next susceptible host. Now, all patients who are infected do not become symptomatic. It has been estimated that something like 90 to 95% patients have no symptoms at all. No one can say that this child has been infected in 90 to 95% cases absolutely symptom free. However, in just 4 to 8% cases, patient develops mild fever, mild flu, mild diarrhea, and some sickness, and then recovers. No one knows that he has been infected with poliovirus. Then 1 to 2% patients, they develop meningitis. They develop features of meningitis. That is high-grade fever, neck stiffness, back stiffness, vomiting, raised ICP, and all features of meningitis, viral meningitis on CSF examination. It happens in 1 to 2% cases, but no weakness and no paralysis follows. And finally, it is only 1 to 5 cases per 1,000 infected. Only 1 to 5 cases out of 1,000 infected develop paralysis or weakness of muscles. But for us, all those patients who have been infected, they are important for us. That means we have to not only reach the paralytic cases, but also those who have developed non-paralytic disease, because if you want to prevent the spread of virus, all of those cases, they are spreading virus in the community. Again, the simple sketch showing what happens if the susceptible person gets infected. 90-95% cases, there is inapparent asymptomatic infection. Only 5-10% become symptomatic. It may be an abortive polio. It may be a non-paralytic aseptic meningitis. It can be paralytic polio with muscle weakness anywhere. All voluntary muscles, they are susceptible. And it can develop very rarely as polioencephalitis. Now, we understand that the paralytic polio means once the anterior horn cells in the spinal cord or the motor nerve nuclei of the cranial nerves, they are infected. by the virus. So we can have three different clinical presentation of paralytic polio. One, either spinal cord is infected, called spinal paralytic polio, or bulbar polio by involvement of the nuclei of the cranial nerves, or both, bulbospinal poliomyelitis. This is an example showing bulbar poliomyelitis, in which you find that the motor nerve nuclei of the cranial nerves are present in the midbrain, pons, medulla. So these are the sites of infection of the motor nuclei who supply the cranial nerves. Of course, you remember the cranial nerves. First and second, all sensory. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, not eighth. Eighth is all sensory. Ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th. All of them, they can be infected and permanently damaged. Regarding bulbar poliomyelitis, I said that 98% cases are having spinal polio, while 2% cases have bulbar polio, that is with involvement of the brainstem nuclei. It can be life-threatening because, as you remember, that important cranial nerve infected are the vagus. There is a 9th, 10th, and 11th cranial nerves. They are important for controlling the movements of palate, pharynx in this area, and the diaphragm. So these are very important vital organs to be. Patient has important symptoms which we should not miss. First, when the palate is involved, there can be nasal twang. Vocal cords are involved, there can be hoarseness of voice. Nasal regurgitation because palate is not working properly. They develop dyspnea because the vagus nerve supplies the diaphragm. Dysphagia because of the pharyngeal and pharyngeal muscle being affected, become weak and difficult to swallow. Child could not feed properly because once there is inability to suck and swallow, there are mucosal secretions who accumulate in the pharynx and they may end up as aspiration. So overall, this picture is very gloomy. Patient with bulbar polio, they frequently die because they involve the vital functioning of diaphragm and the pharyngeal and the laryngeal muscles. This is showing spinal poliomyelitis. See, in the cut section of the spinal cord, this is the gray matter inside the cord with anterior horn having motor nerve nuclei which supply different segments of the body. There can be cervical nerve, thoracic nerve, lumbar nerve, sacral nerve. So, but this is the common format. So, the motor neurons of the anterior horn cells, they are infected and soon they are destroyed permanently. It is causing a lower motor neuron disease with all features of lower motor neuron disease, which means patient has hypotonia, patient has weakness, patient has absent reflexes, patient has fasciculation, there is no sensory loss, and patient has decreased conduction velocities in the peripheral nerves. All these are features of lower motor neuron disease. Of course, like any infection disease, we have clinical features like incubation period, in which the person is infected but no symptoms. Then we have infective period. Patient is infected for to infect it to other. This phase lasts up till 2 to 3 months because patient continues to pass live wild virus in the stool, which can be contagious to the others. Then you have the phase of non-specific symptom, 1 to 3 days, just like fever, mild flu, mild GIT upsets, some irritability, and then patients sometimes they develop features of meningitis, in which the patient has neck stiffness, back stiffness, severe headache, vomiting, signs of raised ICP, all of them they are present. And then we have the paralytic phase, in which the limb muscles are affected, or spine, the muscles of the back, muscles of the neck, muscles of the back are infected. Sometimes you get involvement of the respiratory muscle around the thoracic cage, so they may be paralyzed, and sometimes you have involvement of the bulbar muscle from the cranial nerve involvement. And finally, the recovery phase starts. The initial damage may be extensive, but then only those neurons which are permanently damaged, they continue to do so. Those neurons which are only partially affected as a result of edema of the local site, they may regain some function to some extent, and the recovery is never complete. It is always partial. Typical patients showing weakness of the spinal poliomyelitis. Mostly the lower limbs are affected. The legs are more affected than arms, is an important feature of poliomyelitis. And secondly, the involvement of the nerves and the muscle is patchy and asymmetrical. It doesn't produce a symmetrical bilateral weakness, and that happens in GB syndrome. The weakness is usually descending in order. The muscles, they become floppy with very little tone, usually absent to diminished tendon reflexes, normal sensations, and the recovery phase starts, and you get maximal recovery within 2 months. Sometime a little bit of recovery on function may take place because the unaffected muscles sometimes they start taking the functioning of the paralyzed muscle. How do we diagnose these conditions? The main diagnosis of these diseases is by stool examination for the viral isolation. The blood changes, the urine changes, the CSF changes, all of them, they are non-specific and non-diagnostic. पोलियो के डायग्नोस करने के लिए हमें पेशेंट का स्टूल सैंपल इकट्ठा करना होता है. हमें 2 सैंपल लेने, एक स्पेशलाइज्ड कंटेनर में, और ये सैंपल कोशिश करनी चाहिए कि वीकनेस स्टार्ट होने के विदिन 14 डेज लिया जाए. शीशी में 8 से 10 ग्राम स्टूल सैंपल डाला जाता है एक ख़ास प्लास्टिक की बोतल में. उसको कैप स्क्रू किया जाता है और फिर एक स्पेशलाइज्ड आइस बॉक्स कंटेनर में, जिसके टेम्परेचर उसका बिलो 8 रखा जाए, उसमें सैंपल स्टोर किया जाता है ताकि वो वायरस पार्टिकल की डेथ ना हो जाए और ये ड्राई भी ना हो जाए. This sample has importance from the diagnostic point of view, and the WHO has developed a polio reference lab. We always report such cases to the surveillance officer in all major districts of whole of the country. We inform them, and they give us that icebox container for the stool sampling. we fill the required information from the patient, a brief clinical history, and send this specialized container and the information to a district health officer, who will then send all these samples and the boxes to the central reference lab in Islamabad. It has been a lab which helps to identify the viral particle by all modern means, and they can tell us about whether polio virus was isolated or not, and second, which particular type 1, 2, or 3. But they also perform further genetic typing of this virus particle for epidemiologic purposes. However, sometimes it happens that patient reports to us very late. In that case, even stool sample can still be sent up to 60 days from the onset of disease, and there are chances of isolation. This is extremely important. Now come to CSF examination, which is frequently done in these cases to detect aseptic meningitis. Usually the CSF is clear and slightly turbid. Only lymphocytes are found in the CSF. Only number is not very high, something like 50, 60, 100. The protein is very slightly raised. Normal is 40 milligram per deciliter, but usually is a bit raised. The polymorphs are not found in CSF, and the glucose level of CSF is normal. That is how we differentiate poliomyelitis cases in the CSF finding compared to the pyogenic meningitis. Now, how do we manage these patients? Please understand, there is no cure. There are many unethical treatments in the local community which give a false hope. They're all unethical. There is no cure. Once patient has developed weakness, frequently that weakness remains permanent and lifelong. So in the acute phase, patient having fever, very painful arms and legs and back, we have to relieve the symptoms with simple analgesic antipyretic. Relieve his pain, relieve his fever, make him comfortable to lie down, give them hot compresses to relieve some pain. We do not do physiotherapy in the acute phase because it is more painful. We also would watch for the extent of polio muscle weakness. Maybe it is lower limbs only, maybe it is the upper limbs only, but once it involves the respiratory muscles of the thorax, or involve the diaphragm, or it involves the bulbar muscles, muscles of swallowing and muscles of voice like vocal cords or palate, then the condition can become very sick, very serious. The physiotherapy is only started after the acute phase is over. There is some recovery. Majority of patients have recovered within 2 months, but sometimes the recovery can take place for up to 8 to 9 months, in which the surrounding non-infected muscle, they sometimes take over the function of the paralyzed muscle. And finally, patient is left with complete weakness and paralysis of the certain muscle, and we call it as post-polio paralysis. How do we manage them? These are the two unfortunate children. You can see them. They are being helped by medical therapy in which we are using physical medicine. We are using rehabilitation by giving them walking frames, by giving them foot support, by keeping the foot in the normal position, by giving them ankle support, leg support, splintage, walking frames, crutches. We ultimately have to rehabilitate them by some sort of occupational therapy. Of course, they have got a normal sensation, they have got a normal higher mental function, they have got a normal body system, except very weak and paralyzed muscular system. Finally, the muscles, if they are atrophic, there is atrophy, there is contractures, there are foot deformity, spine deformity, back deformity. So we need to do a number of orthopedic procedures for their rehabilitation. We refer these patients to orthopedic department for their rehabilitation. What is the final outcome? It has been said that something like 5 to 10% of children, they develop the fatal outcome. Sometimes adults, if they have very low immunity or immunocompromised, they get polio and the mortality is a bit higher. In spinal poliomyelitis, something like 50% they recover up to 6 to 8 months, but those who survive are left with mild disability in 25% cases and severe handicap and severe disability in 25% cases. How do we prevent them? Of course, the basic message is prevention of poliomyelitis is possible. Number one, the disease spreads by fecal oral route. Hence, as a public health measure, better sanitation by proper disposal of excreta and safe drinking water supply are very basic. Those babies who are getting mother's milk are again getting immunity from the mother through the breast milk. Mothers transfer antibody via placenta and via breast milk. Hence, these two are very important sources of passive immunity. But they are not long lasting. Many a time they are no more in the baby's blood after a few months. We can give either vaccine like Salk vaccine, which is inactivated, killed vaccine given intramuscularly, or we can give Sabin vaccine, which is oral vaccine but live attenuated. And the standard EPI schedule is that you give the patient oral polio vaccine 2 drops at birth and then repeat the doses at 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 14 weeks. In the recent couple of years, the WHO and the UNICEF have all advocated, and the government of Pakistan has adopted the policy of giving an injectable polio, intramuscular polio at 14 weeks. So these are the doses of poliomyelitis on the standard EPI schedule. On comparing the two vaccines, the live attenuated vaccine is very low in cost compared to inactivated vaccine, intramuscular. Very easy to give it. Anybody can give 2 drops of polio. The polio workers are simple non-medical workers, but they are giving a wonderful job of giving 2 drops of polio to susceptible children below the age of 5 years. On the other hand, injectable polio is to be given into the thigh of the patient by a needle, and that needs skill. The live attenuated vaccine given orally can produce immunity both in the gut and systemically. Both IgA and IgG are produced with a gut immunity and a systemic immunity, while inactivated vaccine only gives immunity in the gut, in the blood, that is injectable immunity. We have to compare advantages and disadvantages. The inactivated polio vaccine is inactivated, is not live. It does not replicate. It cannot be shed in the stool of a vaccinated person. It doesn't cause vaccine-associated paralysis and is very safe to use if the patient is immunocompromised or in household contacts of immunodeficient person. Patient is on steroids or getting chemotherapy for cancer or some other issue. In that case, that patient should not receive live vaccine. But the disadvantages of inactivated polio vaccine is that it requires injection. It is more expensive. The local gut immunity is less compared to the oral polio vaccine, and however, there are benefits of it. When you compare this vaccine with the oral polio vaccine, very simple to administer. Patients have got the vaccine worker, the polio worker is just holding a small vial containing live vaccine and then can give 2 drops to any child below 5 years without any special technique. Less expensive, very good immunity, it is local gut immunity, and this vaccine, when the patient passes the vaccine in the stool, then this vaccine infects others in the surrounding families because the vaccine is passed in the stool of the patient and the recipient. But the feared hazard, that is very theoretical hazard, in a very, very rare situation, maybe in 1 out of million cases, the patient may develop a vaccine-associated paralytic polio. But this is a theoretical risk, and in practicality, this is almost negligible in the community setting. This is a polio vial, and you see that this vial has a blue mark and then there is a center mark. That is called vaccine viability indicator. Because this vaccine is live attenuated, this has to be kept in cold environment between 0 to 4 degrees centigrade, otherwise the vaccine will be destroyed. So, if the vaccine is exposed to heat or high temperature, then frequently this changes the color. And the polio worker should immediately recognize that this vaccine has lost its potency. If the color has changed, it should not be effective and should not be utilized. The live polio vaccine is recommended by WHO for all countries in all polio campaigns. It has a number of advantages and disadvantages. Very easy to administer. It produces local gut immunity as well as systemic immunity. Antibodies are quickly produced. The vaccines are excreted in the stool of the recipient. It causes herd immunity. Very useful in epidemics and inexpensive. On the other hand, this vaccine is very heat susceptible. At a high temperature, if the worker is not careful, immediately it can be destroyed. And there can be frequent vaccine failure because even with a fully potent vaccine, because it is heat susceptible. And very little theoretical risk that sometime that this vaccine may be virulent and cause vaccine-derived poliomyelitis, which is a theoretical risk. Considering the magnitude of the problem, the government, the UNICEF, and the WHO all joined hand and at a national level, polio national immunization days called NID, they have been held regularly since 1992. the whole country campaign is given. The polio workers are recruited and they target children between 0 to 5 years of age. With 2 drops of oral polio vaccine is given. Try to maintain the cold chain in the community by looking at the vaccine viability indicator VVI. It produces herd immunity because of the fecal oral spread, and sometimes this is not a nationwide campaign, but sometimes this is a sub-national immunization days. There is in certain districts of Pakistan or in certain provinces of Pakistan, they are holding immunization days, and sometimes this is a national campaign. We are holding this campaign regularly, couple of months, couple of times every year. Very simple to administer. Just mother holding the baby in her arms and laps, and then polio worker opens the mouth of baby and deliver 2 polio drops. That's all. And of course, he also makes a mark on the baby's nails, thumb. That would be a token, a marker that this baby has received polio vaccine, and this can be confirmed by teams who are using the surveillance of the polio campaign in that community. Well, the Benazir Bhutto was the first head of the state to lead a polio vaccine campaign. She is giving polio vaccine to her own children. And then I got another photograph in which the current Prime Minister Imran Khan is honoring a dedicated polio worker who was continuing the work of polio campaign in far off northern areas with lot of snowfall, but still he continued giving vaccine to the children in the northern areas. We need to support these dedicated workers. We call polio as a public health disease. Why? Because look at the spread. In 1988, only parts of the world that were free of polio included North America, Canada, America, Europe, Australia, and maybe part of South America. The rest, all of the world, like Africa, like Asia, like South America and the upper area, Mexico, all of them, they were regularly reporting endemic polio throughout the season. That was the situation in 1988. So, WHO started a polio eradication campaign, and they said that all countries should become polio free. 350,000 cases were reported in 1988 worldwide. However, by the effective campaign worldwide, only 480 cases were reported in 2001. And WHO say that if a country reports no polio case over 3 years period, then we can label this as having polio-free country. Unfortunately, only 2 countries are now left, Pakistan and Afghanistan. And Pakistan in 2014 reported 306 wild polio cases. Now this is the situation in Pakistan and the trend that we see. You see, in 2014, out of 4,371 AFP cases, 306 were wild polio cases. Again, we made a progress. In 2015, only 21 cases in the whole country. In 2018, only 12 cases. So, we are very hopeful that we are about to eradicate poliomyelitis. But then again, the disease researched, and cases are now again on the increase. So the strategy is that how can we eradicate polio? The WHO says we can eradicate poliomyelitis by the 4 major steps. Number 1, through the expanded program immunization. That is, all children should get regular polio vaccine at the timing that we have described. At birth, at 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 14 weeks, with oral polio and injectable polio at 14 weeks, 1 dose. This is a standard EPI schedule for children below 5 years. Then, every country should have national immunization days. Where polio is still there, this should be a regular feature, usually once or twice a year, or even more than that. Then there should be a sub-national immunization. That is, sometime days are observed in certain districts with cases reporting or provinces with the cases reporting. So sometime the campaign can be as frequent as every 1 to 2 months. Now, the third system is that there should be acute flaccid paralysis surveillance. Any doctor, any hospital, government or private, once a child is reported that he has got sudden weakness of the limbs of any part of body, he was previously normal, that child should be immediately reported and his stool sample taken and sent to the Central Reference Lab in Islamabad for complete diagnosis. And fourth is mop-up immunization. That is, if in one particular village or small town a case of polio is reported, then in the surrounding few kilometer area, all children below 5 years should receive a boost-up immunization called mop-up immunization, ताकि वो तमाम बच्चे अगर वो एक्सपोज हुए हैं उस केस की वजह से उन सारों में इम्यूनिटी को बेहतर किया जा सके. So these are the 4 basic strategies for polio eradication. We have used the word AFP. This is nothing but acute flaccid paralysis introduction. So how do we say acute AFP? Because every patient of muscle weakness is not polio. So we define AFP by a child who is less than 15 years of age. He develops, previously he was well, and then he developed acute onset weakness or flaccid paralysis without any obvious cause. Acute means that this onset of weakness was within less than 4 weeks. The patient looks flaccid, floppy, or limp with absent reflexes, and we must report all such cases to the health department, because then we cannot miss cases of poliomyelitis. And there can be a number of causes of polio. You see, it can be a patient having non-polio virus enteroviruses, which can have same presentation. It can be a case of GB syndrome. It can be a case of traumatic neuritis. That is, patient received a intramuscular injection at the back in the buttock area at the wrong side, causing involvement of the sciatic nerve, and patient come to us with weakness of the limb muscle, lower limbs. So that is trauma to the nerve causing traumatic neuritis, which can mimic polio. We can have transverse myelitis, a viral infection of the spinal cord. We can have diarrhea, severe diarrhea causing hypokalemia and weakness of the muscle. Patient come to us with inability to move arms and legs and back or neck hold but it recovers once diarrhea and hypokalemia are corrected. Sometimes patients come to us with botulism, which is a poison usually through the honey. And some patients have got myasthenia gravis, weakness of the muscle, usually involving the face muscle. All these are possible differential diagnoses in acute poliomyelitis. So, once we say that in poliomyelitis there is iceberg phenomena, which means if we just have one clinical case of poliomyelitis, which is visible above the level of C, it has got around 1,000 cases of poliomyelitis, infected cases of poliomyelitis, which are not having any clinical symptoms, and they are all hidden below the water level. So this is called iceberg phenomena in poliomyelitis. So it is our duty not to get hold of the clinical cases only, which is just less than 1 out of 1,000, but also think about 1,000 more infected person in the community which are in the surrounding. I think I have made my case for all of you to be a responsible health workers, being a partner in the campaign to end polio now. We have enough. As a doctor, as a medical person, it is our duty to support polio campaigns in the community. People have so many wrong concepts, but we see such cases every now and then. We should promote that all children should get polio vaccination, not once but repeatedly whenever there is government complaints. So prevent them from disability. Thank you very much. I hope I have made my case for all of us. Thank you very much.